It's a very good question to ask, what can ordinary people do, especially, a lot of people living in Toronto or Montreal who are a long way from the oceans. Well, I think one of the problems we face today is that we don't connect the way that we're living with the rest of the world. People go to the store in Toronto and they buy salmon. I want a salmon. And when I ask them, was it Atlantic or Pacific? They look at me like, it's a salmon. That's all I want. And you say, wait a minute now. If it's a salmon and it's an Atlantic salmon, it's got to be farmed because there are no available Atlantic salmon commercially. If it's a Pacific salmon, well, there are 5 species. Sockeye, chum, and pinks are not grown in cages. So if you find sockeye, chums, or pinks, buy it. They're wild. But if they're coho or chinook, we farm those. So then you got to ask, are they wild or are they farmed? People don't do that. And they say, well, what difference does it make? I'm just paying for a salmon. There are enormous repercussions. If it's a farmed animal, first of all, it's filled with chemicals, filled with flame retardants, DDT, PCBs, dioxin. We know that. But as well, those salmon were raised on fish pellets. The fish pellets are made of what? Fish that are anchovies, herring, sardines that are taken in South America, where the native people who depend on that no longer have it. So we're wiping out a food fishery for other groups in order to feed to the farmed animal. The farmed animals, as I say, are loaded with the chemicals that come from those pellets. And not only that, when you raise an animal in a pen, guess what? The meat of that salmon isn't red, and it comes out of gray. So a week before the salmon is to be marketed, the seller or the buyer comes to the seller and says, I want my meat bright red, like they have a set of different colors, and you say, oh, I want that one. And they feed it chemical dyes to get the color you want. People ought to be more responsible about what they put into their bodies, because it's not just your own health, it's the ecological, social, and economic effects all over the world. So we have at the David Suzuki Foundation, we have a set of lists of those fish that if you see them in the market, get them. They're ecologically sustainable. Then we have one that's on the cusp of being endangered, and then a list where don't get them. You want to eat sustainably? Don't eat Chilean sea bass. Don't eat orange roughy. Don't eat bluefin tuna. Don't eat swordfish. Don't eat shark. These are all things that we are still catching to feed people like us, and they are simply on the way out. So I think the consumer can have a tremendous impact. We also have a list of, if you want to eat sushi, you don't have to be a vegetarian, but there are a lot of those fish you shouldn't eat.